let's get to it first. We've got to start with criminality, and what's going on in Toronto is something that is dwarfs what happened with the Freedom Convoy. All Canadian people who live in Canada deserve to be secure in their house, make sure that they're not going to be assaulted on the streets, et cetera, et cetera. And so having a whole bunch of people who believe in intimidating people and indeed taking over roadways, not great, not good at all. And I think that it really violates the whole promise of Canada, if there ever was such a thing. And so Ollie London says, this is not Beirut, this is not Baghdad, this is not Kabul, this is Toronto. Oh man, when those are the comparisons, right? Like, here's footage from yesterday's pro-Palestinian march in downtown Toronto. So it's, just to give you an idea, it's blocks long. Like, this is Gerrard, I think it's Gerrard. And then this is the street after Gerrard. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, so apologies about that. But there are a lot of people participating in this march. This is Elm on Yonge, so they're on Yonge Street. I think they're on Yonge. A lot of people, and so very popular. I don't think you could get people out, that many people out for another thing, except maybe the Freedom Convoy. But even then, they were struggling at times to get people to come out and fill the streets. Senator Housakis is responding to the Toronto protests. He says, what we saw on the streets of Toronto yesterday, and across Canada for the past year, the calls for intifada underneath the flags of listed terrorist organizations goes well beyond peaceful protest. It also goes beyond anti-Semitism. This is a declaration of war against our Western values. Make no mistake. I don't think he's wrong. And it's interesting to me. I think that something like this, taking over a street and being this disruptive, is in and of itself something that should be considered too much, right? Like, especially the way this has been structured in order to be as disruptive as possible. Like, somehow, if you had a peaceful protest, you weren't allowed to block streets. That's against the law, right? You can peacefully protest in a park or, wherever, but you're not allowed to block streets like this. And then this has slowly been normalized as just what you do. Black Lives Matter did it. The people tearing down the statues, which is, I guess, Black Lives Matter. The First Nations, when they were blocking railways and other infrastructure, all of a sudden it shifted from having a peaceful protest and getting awareness to, we're going to cripple everything about this. And then, in addition to putting pressure on the infrastructure, shutting down streets, et cetera, they're aggressive and violent. And so these people go well beyond what the Freedom Convoy did, well beyond. And they're completely different things. There isn't really a comparison. And yet, people wouldn't tolerate the Freedom Convoy and say that this is something necessary and something that Canada should do. And really, all I think it is a distraction from the criminality happening in our government currently by our leaders against us. Here's Melissa Lanceman, and she says, absolutely outrageous and wrong. What's happening here is this police officer on Capitol Hill, on Parliament Hill, is saying that the person who denied that Palestine is a state is not allowed on Parliament Hill because he denied Palestinian statehood. Now, I can't tell if this is like, there's this protest going on, and because of this protest, we have this rule in place from headquarters to not allow people who believe X and people who don't believe X to intermingle. And so if people who believe Palestine is a state are gathering on Parliament Hill, which is I think is what was going on, part of the protest and all that, right? And the police have been tasked with protecting them. So these protected people are protesting on Parliament Hill, and you can't go there because you don't agree with their views. That could be what's going on here, but what's being represented is this person was just trying to go on Parliament Hill, and for some reason they got into a conversation about Palestinian statehood, and he wasn't allowed to go on Parliament Hill. That's kind of what I'm getting from Melissa Lanceman here. So she says, absolutely outrageous and wrong. Who told this officer that Canadians need to state a foreign policy position before coming onto Parliament Hill? Parliament Hill should be a place for all Canadians, not a place where people are subject to a political purity test to satisfy anti-Israel protesters. Conservatives will be raising this in the House of Commons at the earliest opportunity. To be clear, I'm not saying that I agree with the position of the officer or the position of like preventing anybody from going on the hill for their views one way or the other. I don't agree with that, and I don't think it's correct. I'm just trying to offer context. I'm just saying that's possibly what happened, because we've seen evidence of people, police officers, being given orders like that. Here's the video. It's 2 minutes long, 2.5 minutes long. I don't think we'll listen to all of it, but we'll see. Here we go. Sorry, I'll cue it up. I thought the one I had earlier it was like started on the part where they were arguing. Hold on. Okay, here it is.
Border of Palestine. You are not permitted on. Yeah, that was before you admitted being against this cause over here.
He never said he was against this cause.
Yeah, he did. He said he's not a supporter of Palestine and doesn't recognize Palestine as a state.
I didn't say that.
But do we want to rewind the video and see?
Well, there's no audio in the actual.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. Eh? But no.
Well,
so you said it.
Camera,
you said it to me. My colleague understood.
Yeah, I said
clearly.
I don't accept Palestine as a state. That doesn't mean I'm anti-Palestinian people.
You don't recognize. And you said you don't support Palestine. Okay?
I don't recognize Palestine as a state.
You said if he took the shoes.
You told me if I were to take the shirt off, I could come in.
Well, that was before you changed your story to I don't support Palestine and I don't recognize Palestine as a state.
Look, I'm not wearing anything that's inflammatory.
Hold on.
And I just want to do interviews.
Hold on. Then at the end, right before I left, I said you are not to go on this side. Right?
No,
This is a clear free speech, infringement of free speech.
Then after, no, I'm not.
Yeah, this is very tyrannical.
You can believe that if you wish.
Well,
You want to come up on Parliament Hill? Other side.
So to be on this side, do you need to declare your support for Palestine? Is that a prerequisite to be over here?
Declare your support for Palestine?
Well, you declared that you're against it.
No, he never declared he was against. No, he didn't.
Did he?
I'm sorry, you did.
I mean,
No, he didn't.
how are...
Exposing the shirt and the Louis Vuitton.
But you're not.
Saying he doesn't recognize Palestine as a state is not declaring he's against Palestine. You guys.
Okay, so you get the flavor of what's going on. Now they're saying if you want to go on Parliament Hill, go on the other side. That these things won't mix. He's saying he just wants to do an interview. It seems pretty tyrannical to me, right? So I don't know, but I don't know that it boils down to you don't recognize the Palestinian state, so you're not allowed on this side. This guy seems to be being obtuse, right? Like, don't say that to the warden. It's not great, but it sounds like these guys were given orders to keep people separate, right? So like there's probably more to this story. Roman Babber says, any Canadian is welcome to come to Parliament Hill 365 days a year. What the heck is this? So this is the same 2 minute 36 video that we just watched. And so like halfway through, he says, if you want to go on Parliament Hill, you can go on the other side. So it's not exactly right. Like it's a little bit different than what it's being represented as, if you ask me. Ivanka Trump says, and this is the Ivanka Trump parody, so be careful. Breaking, Texas has passed a bill banning Islamic Sharia law and anything that contradicts American values. Do you support this? A, yes, B, no. So there's no actual poll here or anything to that effect. But I was thinking, I don't think that we'd be able to pass that in Ontario. I think that anybody proposing something like that may even find themselves being protested, certainly, but also who knows how bad the courts have become. And I mean, who knows, you may be on the other end of some kind of legal action or something to that effect if you bring something like that in. I don't think England could bring it in either. And so Texas, do you think they can bring it in? Mainly because their immigrants are coming from South America and are very Christian? I don't know. Like, I really don't know. But it doesn't seem, I mean, it seems like Texas is bringing it in. I haven't fact checked this, so take it with a grain of salt as usual. But it struck me that if somebody wanted to say, listen, we want to maintain traditional Canadian values and connection to the Christian God, which is mentioned in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and so on and so forth, people would bristle. And I don't know that we'd be able to actually pass it, even with Doug Ford in office. And like, I think Doug Ford's a liberal, but I digress. Even if Doug Ford tried to pass something like this to say, yeah, we should maintain our way of life and not allow Sharia law to take hold and blah, 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 blah. Even if he did do that, I don't think he'd be able to get very far with it at all. So, I mean, Here is Laurie Goldstein. He says the RCMP, this is moving on, RCMP says it already has the documents at the center of the debate bogging down the Commons. RCMP commissioner says there's an investigation ongoing, so we can't comment about anything. Right, I'm sure. Convenient, the RCMP, right? The RCMP says it has the documents, but a letter from the House of Commons law clerk suggests not all the documents have been submitted by the government. The governing Liberals have been unable to move forward on any legislation since Speaker Greg Fergus ruled last week that the government clearly did not fully comply with an order from the House provided to provide documents related to now defunct foundation responsible for doling out hundreds of millions of federal dollars for green technology projects. That House order said the documents should be transferred to the RCMP to investigate potential criminality. RCMP Commissioner Mike Duheme told reporters Thursday that the Mounties already have the documents in question. Quote, "We did receive the documents and there is an investigation ongoing, so I will limit my comments to that," Duheme said when asked about the debate in the House. CBC News asked the RCMP if all the documents related to the House order were submitted. I suppose the spokesperson for the RCMP only said the police force received a batch of documents in August as a result of the House order. So that's what the fight is about. The fight is the Conservatives are saying not everything has been released. Greg Fergus agrees with them and has stopped all House business until all of the documents are released. So this is a weird red herring for the RCMP to weigh in on this, right? Like, this is a new article. This is October 4th. I guess we're on the 6th, but still, like, it was Friday, now it's Sunday, right? Like, so this is the latest, if you will. It seems weird for the RCMP to say, no, nothing to see here, everything's fine, right? Here's a quote, and it just seems, it seems odd for them to get involved because it's a parliamentary issue, right? And they're saying, no, don't worry, we got a batch of documents, everything's fine. What? Like, nobody's talking to you, be quiet. This is a quote from earlier this year, I think. The RCMP can confirm having received the documents from the for the Office of the House of Commons Law Clerk relating to the Sustainable Development and Technologies Canada, SDTC, which were collected in August pursuant to order of the House of Commons, the spokesperson said. While the Commissioner has confirmed there is an investigation giving its ongoing status, the RCMP is not in a position to provide additional details pertaining to the documents in question. But a letter from the law clerk to the Speaker's office suggests the RCMP may not have received all the documents the House requested. Yeah, the letter dated September 16th says that more documents from Innovation, Science, and Economic Development were still forthcoming at the time. It also says documents from the Department of Justice were currently completely withheld. RCMP questioned whether it could use the documents. Despite the investigation, Duheme said that the RCMP had no reason to suspect criminal wrongdoing in the case. This is a little while ago, though. This is July. Quote, "The RCMP has concluded that the available reports do not identify any criminal offenses or evidence of criminal wrongdoing at this time," Duheme wrote in a letter in the House of Commons law clerk to the House of Commons law clerk in July. Of course not. Like, that's the stuff they released. And the point is, the stuff they didn't release has the criminality stuff that they're looking at. Because why would they release the stuff that incriminates them? Right? Like, obviously. And it just seems funny, again, that the CBC is running with this. Everybody's running cover for the Liberals. Like, oh, drop it, you guys. We've already talked about this and there's no criminality. Yeah, and the stuff you saw, morons. Like, holy smoke, right? In the same letter, the commissioner also warned that the RCMP would not be able to use the documents in an investigation if they were obtained through actions of the House of Commons. The RCMP's ability to receive and use information obtained through this production order in the course of a criminal investigation could give rise to concerns under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, he wrote. I'd be interested to read the legal opinion on that. In June, the federal government abolished around $1 billion, the $1 billion green fund in response to a report by the Auditor General that pointed to significant lapses in its handling of federal funding. Auditor General Katie Hogan said Sustainable Development Technology Canada violated its conflict of interest policies 90 times, awarded $59 million to 10 projects that were not eligible, and frequently overstated the environmental benefits of its projects. Yep, and that's scratching the surface. That's just for starters. Like, that's an appetizer compared to the criminality and ridiculousness that's going on in our government. And even just in the Green Slush Fund. Like, they could get away with anything. Like, anything. And nobody cared. Nobody cared. And if anybody did start to care, they got fired, right? Like, they were seen as a problem. They were labeled and they were waltzed out. See you later. Sorry that you couldn't get in on the party here, Karen, but you're going home with the booby prize, which is, we're going to blame you when this all comes crashing down. Lori Goldstein says, has anyone else noticed how the RCMP repeatedly make vague and confusing statements or refuse to comment at the start of many controversies involving the feds, and then hours, days, or even weeks later produce a second statement appearing to back the feds? Vaguely. Yep, it's creepy as heck, says James. The RCMP better be ready for huge shakeup under Polyev. I don't know. Like, I think the RCMP might be less salvageable than the CBC. And the CBC is only salvageable in that I want to sell the brand. Like, I think there's value in the brand. I think Canadians want to like the brand. And I think if you sold it to a patriotic Canadian, and it's worth like, what, pennies on the dollar? I'll give you $7 American dollars for the CBC brand. I think, like, I don't think it's worth much, but I think it's worth something, right? And not including any, like, just the brand, nothing else. Like, all of the infrastructure. I mean, maybe you give them like a spare board or an extra camera or something like that, right? Like, there could be a negotiation about if somebody wanted to actually like broadcast from a place that had a CBC studio, but it would be rent. And then like the rest of the building would be for something else. I don't know what, but I still think there's value in the CBC. Although people compared, I was comparing, they sold Petro-Canada and like there was value in that. And people were saying, yeah, there actually was tangible value in Petro-Canada. In CBC, there's only liabilities. And you could be right. So like I often say, if you're a business and you have more bills than you have revenue incoming, then you just have bills. Like, you don't have a business. You have bills, right? You have some customers maybe, but mostly you just have bills. And so like, it's perhaps true that the CBC as it stands right now costs so much that it's just bills. But I think that there'd be a pretty easy pathway to monetize that. Although I have Canada Poly, so I could monetize myself better, I suppose. I should probably do that as well. Anyway, the RCMP, back to this. They're a worse, more damaged brand than the CBC. And the problem with the RCMP is that they have power and they can do real damage by not pursuing some criminal matters while pursuing others, like the posts you put on Facebook, for example, instead of criminality like Chinese traitors in our government, right? Like, that's what they want to do. Alex Zoltan says it's just now occurring to Trudeau Liberal Stephen McKinnon that they cannot implement their additional capital gains tax until they hand over the Green Slush Fund documents. The prospect of being unable to steal more money from Canadians seems to be sinking in. So he's talking about how, oh yeah, it has to pass. That has to pass. The capital gains tax thing has to pass. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if doing what the Conservatives have done will actually be able to fix the problem. Fix the problem. Stop the Liberals from inflicting more damage and maybe win some things back. Who knows? Here's this.
I don't know if it's so much tone, but it should worry Canadians that Conservatives find it acceptable to show up for 5 consecutive days without being willing to debate legislation that's on the floor to help Canadians.
Well, they want to go to an election, and you know, this Parliament's looking a little bit tired. So when are Canadians going to go to an election?
Well, you know what? They have to convince a majority of the House of that. That's the way the system works. What they're doing is not only preventing the government from putting in place legislation that would help people, but preventing the other opposition parties from making their points and their contributions as well.
One of the things that this has stopped is the passage of the Ways and Means well, what effect will not getting that revenue from the capital gains tax have on Canadians?
I don't know that that's the choice before us, getting that revenue or not. Obviously, the Ways and Means motion has to pass, but that's still the plan.
Thank you.
It has to pass. That's still the plan. Well, it doesn't look like you're in control at this point in time unless you hand over the documents. And once you hand over the documents, then there's going to be serious questions about confidence in the House, regardless of what Jagmeet Singh says. Probably. I would be very surprised. Although they're ideologues and the House is captured and the elections are rigged. So kind of in a lot of trouble here in Canada. Andy Lee says, I'm curious, when Chinese diplomats called Justin Trudeau's former acting national security advisor, David Morrison, asking him to help achieve a certain outcome in the Senate or to bury negative stories by the press, was that considered influence or interference? So Andy Lee here says, former acting national security and intelligence advisor to Prime Minister Trudeau, David Morrison, now rambling on about how Chinese diplomats who contacted him displeased about reporting didn't understand that he can't control the media in Canada. So this is part and parcel of the Hogue thing, which is pretty invalid if you ask me. If she's never going to tell us who the Chinese traders are, what's the point? This is in response to Dave Morrison talking about, Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, talking about the Hogue inquiry. China pulled out all the stops to defeat a 2021 House of Commons motion condemning Beijing's repression of Uyghurs as genocide. He does not believe China's actions on the motion were foreign interference. Weird, right? And Anne says, I remember every Liberal cabinet minister avoided Parliament during that vote. I remember that too, right? It was like there was COVID going around and they didn't want to catch it or something like that. A flu? Yeah. The Wuhan flu. Here's America AF says, we've got to talk about FEMA. He says, breaking, the director of public affairs for FEMA has locked their X account. So there you go. Jacqueline Rothenberg has locked her account. So that's protected posts now. Here's Laura Loomer. She says FEMA is blocking delivery trucks from delivering supplies in North Carolina. Trucks from Florida were ordered to turn around. A follower of mine says a company her husband worked for sent 60 trucks to help in North Carolina, and all of them were denied access to help, and they were ordered to turn around and blocked from entering in a blockade. Pete Buttigieg lied. Why is there a blockade in Asheville? No one on Elon, not only are Elon Musk's generous efforts to assist the people in North Carolina being denied, but truckers who drove all the way from Florida to help were ordered to turn around. This is a deliberate effort to stop the people of North Carolina from being rescued and to stop all aid efforts. Thousands of people will die because of this government obfuscation. So it's pretty interesting stuff. Here's the tweet. It says, you wanted to share some information with you. A company that my husband used to work for out of Tampa sent approximately 60 heavy-duty triaxle dump trucks and long haulers to help in North Carolina. They arrived yesterday to Asheville. Well, they denied them all access to help and made them turn back around and go back to Florida. I'm beyond furious. The company that sent them to help is Transfos and Whitney, based out of Bartow, Florida. Thought you'd like to know. I haven't said anything to anyone else as I was driving this morning on my way from Tampa to North Carolina. So pretty crazy stuff. Wall Street Apes says, there you have it, straight from the local law enforcement. Do not donate to FEMA for Hurricane Helene victims. Please do not donate to FEMA. They're hindering a lot of what people are trying to accomplish out in the western part of the state. Here's the cop. He's got a TikTok and it's about a minute. Here we go.
By now, everyone's heard about what's going on in the western part of Carolina, eastern Tennessee, Florida, Georgia. Donate. Please donate what you can. Try to find a nonprofit to donate to, a church, local PD. A lot of those are taking donations, sheriff's departments. I know my department is running a bunch of stuff to the western part of the state to help. Donate. But please do not donate to FEMA. They are hindering a lot of what people are trying to accomplish out in the western part of the state. FEMA doesn't understand that these Appalachian people are built differently. I am very familiar with them. They are not going to stand by idly and have government officials tell them what to do. FEMA's playing a game of FAFO because free men don't ask for permission. Again, please donate and help these people out. They need us now more than ever.
So there you go. And that's an interesting situation that's happening there. It's a lot like Katrina, except that they're not reporting it all like Katrina. And at the time, there was a Republican president in, it was George W. Bush, and he was blamed with a bad Katrina response, right? And people were saying, Republicans hate Americans, and all sorts of negative press for the response and so on. And in the New York Times this time, it's pretty mild. Like, the response is very small. They're not running a lot of stories. They're not talking about it as if it's a big deal. They're minimizing it completely, whereas Katrina was seen as a botched effort by an incompetent imbecile. And Robert says, compare how the New York Times covered Hurricane Katrina versus Hurricane Helene. Katrina, 12 consecutive days of full-page coverage on A1, all caps, banner headlines, countless articles about failures of the Bush administration. Helene, 7 days of minor coverage, on A1, none at all on day 2. Mostly just photo captions referencing articles on A12, A19. Zero mentions of any potential failures on the part of the Biden-Harris administration. Still think there's no media bias? The media bias is so deep, people can't even tell anymore because they've insulated themselves against anything that violates their preconceived notions, which is interesting as well. James says, I've heard about the lithium mines in the mountains. I've heard about BlackRock and Vanguard being heavily invested in that area. What I didn't know was who was heavily invested in BlackRock. So that's interesting. This is a 2-minute long video. I don't know who it is. Hold on. He says it is the vice president's husband who is the person who's going to benefit most out of all of this. And I've heard what he's saying here is he's saying that on the September 24th, the mines got permitted to change their operations and to build something near to the most devastated area in the hurricane's path. And so here's what he's saying.
So please watch this entire video. So between Kings Mountain and Chimney Rock, North Carolina is the largest lithium deposit in the world. And the rights are owned by Albemarle Global. And on September the 24th, they actually applied for federal and state permits to redirect and reconstruct their mining operation between Kings Mountain and Chimney Rock. So Albemarle is owned mostly by stockholders, Vanguard and BlackRock Group. Well, guess who the biggest investor in BlackRock and Vanguard is? Douglas Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband. So Albemarle is home headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. And when these permits get approved, they're proposing $250 billion yearly in mining. Douglas Emhoff's stock holdings just went up substantially. And guess who is the final approval for the permits? That would be our lovely BP. So, as I said, I'm going to post about 6.
So take it with a grain of salt. But if that's true, seems like a very small circle. And it seems, well, we're going to talk about weather modification at the end of the show. But yeah, it seems like a very small circle and seems very concerning conflict of interest, don't you think? Lots of money in all of that. And VP Harris is very concerned about the people of Lebanon. She posted yesterday, I think it's yesterday, recently, the people of Lebanon are facing an increasingly dire humanitarian situation. I'm concerned about the security and well-being of civilians suffering in Lebanon and will continue working to help meet the needs of all civilians there. To that end, the United States will provide nearly $157 million in additional assistance to the people of Lebanon for essential needs such as food, shelter, water, protection, and sanitation to help those who have been displaced by the recent conflict. This additional support brings U.S. total assistance to Lebanon over the last year to $385 million. Oh man, if North Carolina wasn't closer to Lebanon, right? Like they could have some of that aid package, but no. Waynesville, North Carolina, small business owners who lost everything received these notices from the government yesterday. The notice says that they can't start repairs without purchasing permits and getting assessments from the government. Notice, because this building is located in a floodplain and was damaged, a damage assessment must be conducted by Waynesville Development Services. Before doing any repair work, you must call the Waynesville Development Services office to obtain the proper permits. Failure to obtain permits prior to reconstruction approval may result in, what does it say, may result in a penalty. So we may financially penalize you for repairing your home before we permit you to repair your home because it's in a floodplain. You're welcome, citizen. Crazy town, right? Here is George, and let's talk about the Trump rally in Butler yesterday. George says Trump just started his remarks in Butler saying, as I was saying. So here's the savior, the graph that saved Donald Trump, right? The graph maybe could run for president in 2028. Here we go.
Lee, thank you very much, really. And thank you, a very big thank you to Pennsylvania. We love Pennsylvania. And as I was saying,
The hero graph.
Lee, thank you.
So Trump is on form, and so Bad Hombre says 80,000 at the rally, 15 million watching on X. Elon Musk, a former Biden voter and hero to many, even apolitical folks, is on stage. A defiant comeback story for the history books. All this in must-win Pennsylvania. The Harris-Waltz campaign tonight is not joyful. Well, whatever. And George says, breaking, the paramedic who took care of Trump at Butler Memorial Hospital just gave the most beautiful description of Trump the media has never shown. I heard him speak with his wife, his children, and his grandchildren. He let them know that he was safe and that he was being taken care of. It's 2.5 minutes. It's a bit long, really. But it's interesting, and it shows a side of Trump that humanizes him in a way, right? And that's the whole idea. Here's another humanizing moment. Culture Wars says 2 billionaires sitting on $5 chairs. Those are real down-to-earth people. So yeah, there you go. And I mean, like, who hasn't been in a tent command room, right, chatting with your billionaire buddy? I'm like kind of tongue-in-cheeking it, but like, you know, I've been in rooms like this, tents like this. It's interesting. It's fun. It's cool. Not with Trump or Elon Musk, but like, you know, backstage at concerts or green rooms with interesting people, just in various different situations. And like, that's kind of cool. And this is a neat picture. Anyway, moving on. Vigilant Fox says the mood shifted as Musk issued a grave warning about the future of America if Democrats win in November. This is just a little bit of Elon Musk's speech. Here we go.
This election, I think it's the most important election of our lifetime. This is no ordinary election. The other side wants to take away your freedom of speech. They want to take away your right to bear arms. They want to take away your right to vote effectively. You've got 14 states now that don't require voter ID. California, where I used to live, is just passed a law banning voter ID for voting. I still can't believe that's real. So how are you supposed to have a proper election if there's no ID? It's just meaningless. And free speech is the bedrock of democracy. And if people don't know what's going on, if they don't know the truth, how can you make an informed vote? You must have free speech in order to have democracy. That's why it's the First Amendment. And the Second Amendment is there to ensure that we have the First Amendment.
So there you go. It seems obvious to Elon, I guess. Okay, so Donald Trump ends his rallies with Nessun Dorma, okay? And in Italian, it sounds really impressive. This is the sum of all fears. At the end of the sum of all fears, when all the traitors get their comeuppance, Nessun Dorma is played, and it's a very impactful scene. So Trump has been ending his rallies with this song for years, for a long time. Okay, and this is just part of this here. You can hear it in the background, and it takes over. And he's murdered here, okay? So he's murdered. But this is not the point necessarily. We're not just going to listen to Nessun Dorma for no reason at all. Here is what Nessun Dorma means in English. And I thought it was very, very interesting. And it's like, this woman is just incredible. Like, this woman's voice is incredible. So we're going to listen to probably a bit more of this than you think. But also, there's a mushy middle that's a little bit kind of, it lags a little bit because the notes are being held a long time. But we're going to start listening to it, and then I'm going to jump to the end. Here we go.
I have no idea what he is saying. Here is Nessun Dorma in English. But my secrets are hidden well. My name no one shall ever know. No, no. Oh, but princess, you know these secrets. To you I tell.
Okay, and I'll forward it to the end part here, which is just equally impressive. Okay, here's Stars Shine Bright at Dawn. I think this will do it. This will do it.
Those bright stars at dawn will win. We will win. Oh, we
Right. So in case you weren't sure what she's saying there, she says, we will win at dawn. At dawn, we will win. We will win. We will win. We will win. So Donald Trump's hilarious. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful